Though there are faults to Monsanto's cabin, like no screened windows to keep the flies out in the daytime, just big board windows. So that also on foggy days when it's damp, if you leave them open, it's too cold. If you leave them closed, you can't see anything and have to light the lamp at noon. And but for that, no other faults. It's all marvelous. And at first, it's so amazing to be able to enjoy dreamy afternoon meadows of heather up the other end of the canyon, and just by walking less than a half mile, you can suddenly also enjoy wild, gloomy seacoast. Or if you're sick of either of these, just sit by the creek in a glady spot and dream over snags. So easy in the woods to daydream and pray to the local spirits and say, "Allow me to stay here. I only want peace." And those foggy peaks answer back mutely, "Yes." And to say to yourself, if you're like me with theological preoccupations, at least at the time, before I went mad, I still had such preoccupations. God, who is everything, possesses the eye of awakening, like dreaming a long dream of an impossible task, and you wake up in a flash. Oops, no task, it's done and gone. And in the flush of the first new days of joy, I confidently tell myself, not expecting what I'll do in 3 weeks only, no more dissipation. It's time for me to quietly watch the world, even enjoy it. First in woods like these, then just calmly walk and talk among people of the world. No booze, no drugs, no binges, no bouts with beatniks and drunks and junkies and everybody. No more I ask myself the question, oh, why is God torturing me? That's it. Be a loner. Travel. Talk to waiters only, in fact. In Milan, Paris, just talk to waiters. Walk around. No more self-imposed agony. It's time to think and watch and keep concentrated on the fact that after all this, whole surface of the world as we know it now will be covered with the silt of 1 billion years in time. Yay for this! More aloneness. Go back to childhood. Just eat apples and read your catechism. Sit on curbstones. The hell with the hot lights of Hollywood. Remembering that awful time only a year earlier when I had to rehearse my reading of prose a third time under the hot lights of the Steve Allen show in the Burbank studio. 100 technicians waiting for me to start reading. Steve Allen watching me, expectant to see, plunks the piano. I sit there on the dunce's stool and refuse to read a word or open my mouth. I don't have to rehearse, for God's sake, Steve. But go ahead. We just want to get at the tone of your voice. Just this last time. I'll let you off the dress rehearsal. And I sit there sweating, not saying a word for a whole minute as everybody watches. Finally, I say, "No, I can't do it." And I go across the street to get drunk. But surprising everybody the night of the show by doing my job of reading just fine, which surprises the producers. And so they take me out with a Hollywood starlet who turns out to be a big bore trying to read me her poetry and won't talk love because in Hollywood, man, love is for sale. So even that marvelous long remembrances of life all the time in the world, to just sit there or lie there or walk about slowly remembering all the details of life which now, because 1,000,000 light years away, have taken on the aspects, as they must have for Proust in his sealed room, of pleasant mental movies brought up at will and projected for further study and pleasure, as I imagine God to be doing this very minute, watching his own movie, which is us. Even one night, when I'm so happy sighing to turn over to resume my sleep, but a rat suddenly runs over my head, it's marvelous because I then take the folding cot and put a big wide board on it that covers both sides so I won't sink into the canvas confines there, and place 2 old sleeping bags over the board, then my own on top. I have the most marvelous and rat-free and in fact healthy for the back bed in the world. I also take long, curious hikes to see what's what in the other direction inland, going up a few miles along the dirt road that leads to isolated ranches and logging camps. I come to giant, sad, quiet valleys where you see 150-foot tall redwood trees with sometimes one little bird right on the topmost peak twig sticking straight up. The bird balances up there, surveying the fog and the great trees. You see one single flower nodding on a cliffside far across the canyon, or a huge knot in a redwood tree looking like Zeus's face, or some god's little crazy creations goofing around in creek pools. Zigzag bugs, or a sign on a lonely fence saying, MP Passy, no trespassing, or terraces of fern in the dripping redwood shade, and you think a long way from the beat generation in this rainforest. So I angle back down to the home canyon and down the path past the cabin and out to the sea, where the mule is on the seashore, nibbling under that 1,000-foot bridge, or sometimes just standing, staring at me with big brown Garden of Eden eyes. The mule being a pet of one of the families who have a cabin in the canyon, and it, as I say, Alf by name, just wanders from one end of the canyon where the corral fence stops him, corral fence stops him, to the wide seashore where the sea stops him, but a strange Gauguin-esque mule when you first see him, leaving his black dung on the perfect white sand. An immortal and primordial mule owning a whole valley. I even finally later find out where Alf sleeps, which is like a sacred grove of trees in that dreaming meadow of heather. So I feed Alf the last of my apples, which he receives with big, far-off teeth inside his soft, hairy muzzle, never biting, just muffing up my apple from my outstretched palm and chomping away sadly, turning to scratches behind against a tree with a big, erotic motion that gets worse and worse till finally he's standing there with erectile dong that would scare the whore of Babylon, let alone me. All kinds of strange and marvelous things, like the weird Ripley situation of a huge tree that's fallen across a creek maybe 500 years ago and's made a bridge thereby, and the other end of its trunk is now buried in 10 feet of silt and foliage. Strange enough, but out of the middle trunk over the water rises straight another redwood tree, looking like it's been planted in the tree trunk or stuck down into it by a god hand. I can't figure it out, and stare at this chewing furiously on big choking handfuls of peanuts like a college boy, and only weeks before falling on my head in the Bowery. Even when a rancher car goes by, I daydream mad ideas like, here comes Farmer Jones and his two daughters, and here I am with a 60-foot redwood tree under my arm, walking slowly, pulling it along. They are amazed and scared. Are we dreaming? Can anybody be so strong? They even ask me, and my big Zen answer is, you only think I'm strong. And I go down the road carrying the tree. This has me laughing in Cloverfield 4 hours. I pass a cow which turns to look at me as it takes a big dreamy crap. Back in the cabin, I light the fire and sit sighing, and there are leaves skittering on the tin roof. It's August in Big Sur. I fall asleep in the chair, and when I wake up, I'm facing the thick little tangled woods outside the door, and I suddenly remember them from long ago. Even to the particular clumpiness of the thickets, stem by stem, the twist of them, like an old home place. But just as I'm wondering what all this mess is, bang! The wind closes the cabin door on my side of it, so I conclude I see as much as doors will allow, open or shut, adding as I get up in a loud English lord voice nobody can hear anyway, an issue broached is an issue smote, sir. Pronouncing issue like issue, and this has me laughing all through supper, which is potatoes wrapped in foil and thrown on the fire, and coffee, and hunks of Spam roasted on a spit, and applesauce and cheese. And when I light the lamp of after-supper reading, here comes the nightly moth to his nightly death at my lamp. After I put out the lamp temporarily, there's the moth sleeping on the wall, not realizing I've put it on again. Meanwhile, by the way, and however, every day is cold and cloudy. or damp, not cold in the eastern sense, and every night is absolutely fog, no stars whatever to be seen, but this too turns out to be a marvelous circumstance, as I find out later. It's the damp season, and the other dwellers or weekenders of the canyon don't come out on the weekends. I'm absolutely alone for weeks on end, because later in August, when the sun conquered the fog, suddenly I was amazed to hear laughing and scratching all up and down the valley, which had been mine, only mine. And when I tried to go to the beach to squat and write, there were whole families having outings. Some of them younger people who'd simply park their cars up on the high bridge bluff and climb down. Some of them, in fact, gangs of yelling hoodlums. So the rainforest summer fog was grand, and besides, when the sun prevailed in August, a horrible development took place. Huge blasts of frightening gale-like wind came pouring into the canyon, making all the trees roar with a really frightening intensity, making that sometimes built up to a booming roar of trees that shook the cabin and woke you up, and was in fact one of the things that contributed to my mad fit. But the most marvelous day of all, when I completely forgot who I was, where I was, or the time of day, just with my pants rolled up above my knees, wading in the creek, rearranging the rocks and some of the snags so that the water where I stooped, near the sandy shore, to get jugfuls would, instead of just sluggishly passing by shallow over mud with bugs in it, now come rushing in a pure, gurgly, clear stream, and deep too. I dug into the white sand and arranged underground rocks, so now I could stick a jug in there and tilt the opening to the stream, and it would fill up instantly with clear, rushing, unstagnated, bugless drinking water. Making a mill race is what it's called. And because now the water rushed so fast and deep, right by the sandy stooping place, I had to build a kind of seawall of rocks against that rush so that the shore would not be silted away by the race. Doing that, fortifying the outside of the seawall with smaller rocks, and finally at sundown with bent head over my sniffling endeavors, the way a kid sniffles when he's been playing all day, I start inserting tiny pebbles into the spaces between the stones so that no water can sneak over to wash away the shore, even down to the tiniest sand, a perfect seawall, which I top with a wood plank for everyone to kneel on when they come to fetch their holy water. Looking up from this work of an entire day, from noon till sundown, amazed to see where I was, who I was, what I'd done. The absolute innocence, like of Indian fashioning a canoe all alone in the woods. And as I say, only weeks earlier I'd fallen flat on my head in the Bowery and everybody thought I'd hurt myself. So I make supper with a happy song and go out into the foggy moonlight. The moon sent its white luminescence through, and marveled to watch the new, swift, gurgling, clear water run with its pretty flashes of light. And when the fog's over and the stars and the moon come out at night, it'll be a beautiful sight. And such things, a whole mess of little joys like that, amazing me when I came back in the horror of later to see how they'd all changed and become sinister. Even my poor little wood platform and mill race, when my eyes and my stomach nauseous and my soul screaming 1,000 babbling words, oh, it's hard to explain. The best thing to do is not be false.